Alright, hello everybody. So today we're going to be starting on a much different project, or maybe not super different, but a different project for me. I got a chunk of wrought iron here that I was given / kind of bought. Made a trade for, that's a good way to put it. But wrought iron is an old form of making iron, and it ends up with this really interesting, very like wood grain-ish pattern. And I want to try and make a knife out of it. Now, normally you can't make a knife out of this stuff, but you can insert a piece of high carbon steel in it to be the edge of the knife. So that's what I'm going to be trying to do today. I'm going to be trying to make sure that this forge weld stays together nicely, and then I'm going to be trying to put a piece of high carbon steel in here to see how it turns out and if we can make a knife out of it. So if you guys are willing to stick around for probably a longer project, then yeah, welcome in and let's get to work. If you guys do like what you're seeing and like any of the stuff that I'm making, please feel free to like, subscribe, add a comment if there's anything you'd like to see me try and make personally. And yeah, let's get to work and see how this turns out. Alright, so first things first, I need to thin down this material and re-forge weld it together. So we're going to be doing that using the power hammer and just some very light taps. Oh, I got to turn the power hammer on to do that. You also need to make sure that your material is clean all the time, because if it is not clean, then you end up with a lot of cold cuts and a lot of shmoo in there. It is not good for the material. You also cannot forge it very cold. Like, this is way colder than I should normally even be hitting this with a hammer, because it'll just split apart. So I gotta forge this down now, and then I'm gonna cut it roughly in half, and then fold it back onto itself and forge weld it together. There we go. So I've just got to measure now. We're sitting at 16 centimeters roughly, which means I need to cut it at 8 centimeters, which is right there. So I'm just going to leave a little mark there so that I know where it is. Throw it back in the fire, heat it up, and cut it. Not fully in half, but enough to bend it. And then we sprinkle some flux in there, and we're good to go. Alright, so we're heated up relatively to where we need to be. Clean it off. Grab the hammer, set it over that dot, make sure it's pretty close, and then we're just going to cut it about 2/3 of the way down. So about there. That looks pretty good. We're going to clean it off again. You want to try and have as little scale or as little buildup of material on the mating surfaces as possible. Then we just take some flux. This is just borax, same stuff you use in like your laundry or anything like that. You just sprinkle some on. It's going to melt and form kind of almost like a glass-like substance. Then we're going to heat it up and bend it over. So right now I might be able to actually just straight up bend it. that's actually a good thing. We want that. Because it means we're going to lose a lot less, not lose a lot less, but there's going to be a much better chance of everything sticking together. And then we're going to just do some very light taps with the hand hammer. To try and get it to just stick together, and then we'll be using the power hammer to forge everything flat again. Alright, so we should have enough heat in this piece now. We're just going to be like very gently tapping it. Just very gently. All I'm trying to do here is make sure that the pieces stay stuck together. You can even do this with, like, if you've got a big enough vise, you can do this with a vise. I have a couple friends that's how they make their pattern welded steel as well. So you can do it that way. I just prefer light hammer blows. And all we're doing is, like, we're very gently sticking this together. And now that it's, as far as I can tell, roughly together, we're going to throw it back in the fire. To clean it off just a little bit, make sure we don't have any of that schmoo or anything there. Throw a little bit more flux on it just to make sure that it seals up nice and good. We'll hit it on the power hammer a little bit, and then we'll get to forging our billet out properly. Alright, we got our piece, cleaned it off. Now it's time flip it around. We've already lost too much heat, so we're throwing it back in the fire. Alright, so now all we're doing is we're working on that other side. We've got to keep the heat on there a lot. All I'm doing here is I'm just trying to make sure that everything stays relatively flat, but we also don't want our welds coming apart. And this is a very good way to test if your welds will come apart, is to hit it on the bias of where you're welding. So if I'm welding this way, the best spot to hit it is on top like this to see if it sprays apart. Alright, so now we're going to just work on the edges. Make it nice and clean and make it a nice clean billet. So that's just a lot of very gentle tapping essentially. Making sure that everything stays nice and forged together, hopefully. Looks like it so far. Happy about that. So when you're making a sanmai, that's what this type of knife is called, a sanmai knife. One of the biggest things that you need to worry about is stuff splitting. Especially with high carbon, or not high carbon, with wrought iron. So we're going to be very lightly cutting into this as nicely as we can, essentially using a hot chisel, using this guy. If anything, I should be using a thinner bladed chisel actually, I just don't have one. Otherwise I would be using it. Well, okay, that might be a lie. I might have it. We're going to fix this one up and we're going to use it. Alright, so now we're going to be cutting that slot into the knife blank. So here we go. And I've got to do this pretty gently glove on so the radiant heat doesn't absolutely cook my hand. All we're doing here is we're just trying to make a nice little section. So you guys might be able to see it on camera, I'm not too sure. But you can see the chunk that we've cut out of it. And we're just going to keep following that line every time. I'm going to have to grab my cooler. It's not actually a cooler, my lubricant. There's this stuff that you can make. There's maybe something good for the new people. It's basically just beeswax and graphite. Works really, really good to cool off the tips of punches and chisels and stuff to make sure that you don't deform them or make them really unhappy. Alright, we're up to heat. Let's get this slot cut. We should be able to do it in this heat, hopefully. So now that I've got that line drawn, I can swing a little bit harder. You can see the beeswax and everything cooking off. All I'm doing here is I'm just going to cool it off real quick. Flip the chisel around in case it's not quite the right angle on each side. And we're just going to keep working our way along this line that we've cut in it. We got to keep cooling it pretty frequently, otherwise it can start to deform and rivet itself into the material, which is really not something that you want to happen. And we've just launched the beast, so give me 2 seconds to find that. It's not starting my shop on fire, thank you. Alright, so you can see better now what I'm doing. I'm just going to keep trying to open that up a bit more. Alright, so our piece should be hot enough. We're going to be trying something a little bit different. This is something that I haven't personally tried before. I don't know if you guys can see this. Yeah. So I've got my hot cut here. And I'm actually going to set the slot that we've started to cut with the chisel on top of it. And I'm going to see if I can just force it open a bit more. And it appears to be working pretty nicely, actually. I might use this technique for a little while, see if we can get some better slots cut, maybe. I've only ever tried doing this a couple times, so I'm not really certain on like what the best procedure or like the order of operations to do this in is. But this appears to be working pretty nicely, actually. We've got a pretty nice slot cut in it. I do need to get it a little bit deeper. So we're going to heat it up again, get it nice and hot. Force it back down onto there. And then I've got a piece of high carbon steel that I've broken off of one of my failed knives. So I know it's good steel. And we're going to forge that down into a thin little bar to then put in as the bit. And that is actually the name of it too. It is called the bit. When you're inserting something into another piece of metal, it's usually called the bit or the insert. I've always used the bit, but alright, we're definitely back to hot enough, so we're going to flip it around and we're going to try and split this open a little bit more. nicely, which is kind of unnerving for me because I'm expecting this to go wrong at some point in time. This is definitely meant to be more of a learning experience for me than it is meant to be a how-to video. But this appears to be working very nicely. We've got a nice big solid cavity there. So now I need to forge this down to fit in here so that it fits nicely and snugly, which isn't going to be a lot, honestly. But that's all the time I've got for today. Show you guys what I'm actually talking about here and realizing that you guys can't see. So that's how this is going to sit in there. We've got a nice solid cavity in there that you can see. It looks pretty good, honestly. Here, let's get it a little closer so you can see. But then this little piece of metal, once it's forged down to the proper size, is just going to sit snugly in here. And then we forge weld everything back together. But like I said, that's all the time I've got for today. But if you're enjoying maybe this more me experimenting with stuff and trying to learn new things as well, let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you guys want to see me make. And if you're enjoying the videos, please leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. We're going to continue on with trying to make a wrought iron sanmai chef's knife of some sort. We'll see. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now. And you're always welcome back at the shop. Alright, so now we're going to be taking this little piece of material and sticking it into... I've let this cool down, by the way. We're going to be taking it and sticking it in here. I've got to slim it down a little bit so that it actually fits properly. We'll be forge welding everything together now. So this is going to go in the fire, and this guy's just going to sit away for a little bit. Once I've got it set up, that's going to become the jacket for that piece of material. Alright, so now we just got to start thinning this thing, or not thinning it down, but kind of upsetting it down on itself. I'm just going to be using this as kind of a reference for how deep it needs to go in. So I've got to take that big hump down now. We'll throw it back in the fire. Alright, should be warm enough now. I'm doing this at cooler temperatures because I don't want to squish the material too much as I'm doing this. So I'm trying to use cooler temperatures so that it's not as plastic and as malleable. And this allows me to kind of control the thickness and how much it squishes. Looking pretty good. Now I just gotta see how it fits in here. That's gonna fit real nicely once it's all nice and warm. Alrighty, I will see you guys once we get to the point of welding this thing in. forging by hand now, but I've got to get this back up to welding temperature, and we got to keep putting flux on it. We got to keep putting this it's just borax, like stuff that you'd use for like your laundry, but it creates a barrier so that the metal, the iron and the steel can't oxidize, which inhibits forge welding. It inhibits welding, period, but it inhibits the forge welding that I'm doing. So we're going to throw this back into the fire and let it heat back up to critical temperature. Alright, first proper welding pass now. Like we did our tack weld. Now we're going to use the hammer again. There we go. Alright, we can start forging a little bit harder now. And all I'm going to be doing is just squishing it down. Now the thing is if I do a pass on this side, I have to do a pass the same speed and same strength on this side. Otherwise, I'll move my core material to one side or the other, and then you end up with a bad looking knife. Because it'll have high carbon steel mostly out on this side and almost none on one side or the other. There we go. That looks like it's doing pretty good, actually. Now I'm going to work on this end and try and get it thinned out as well. And then it's going to be a lot of hand hammering. That's just the plain and simple of it. That's the annoying part about making these sand mine knives, is you have to do a lot of hand hammering. You can't use the power hammer as much. Now if I was doing this with a mild steel jacket rather than a wrought iron jacket, it would be a lot simpler to use the power hammer, but there's just so much risk involved in making sure that the wrought iron doesn't fray and split, that I want to work slowly and cautiously. All right. That's not great. So I'm going to have to try and correct that using my hand hammer. So we'll get to that on the next one. But I think I'm going to end the video here. But we've got our billet formed. We've got a nice clean billet. It's all going to be hand hammering now. But yeah. You guys are liking what you're seeing and want to join me for more kind of projects and more learning experiences for me, really truly, you can drop a like and subscribe, hit the bell button, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. You guys are always welcome back at the shop.